Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. In this video, I'm going to talk about how Fiat kind of changes a lot of incentives in a really sinister and really bad way. Essentially, what Fiat makes you do is take cheap substitutes and pretend that they're as good as the real thing. This is a phenomenon that I've noticed just with like products and things like that. You notice like for example, like you look at products from the Gilded Age and stuff like that, and it tends to be much higher quality than the stuff that's produced today. A lot of it is based on cost. There's like a devaluing of almost everything just because there's more money being printed. So essentially, everything just is produced on the cheap in any way they can, and you have sort of like this Walmart effect. The quality of goods continues to go down, and quality of food tends to go down, everything else, because of the pressure of monetary expansion. Now that's with physical goods, and you talk to people that are in woodworking or something like that, and they'll tell you like the best tools are from like the late 1800s or something like that, because and like not the craftsman craft that you might get at Sears or something, because they just knew how to make those things better, and they were more motivated to get people to like they were more motivated to make more quality goods because there was sound money, and because people valued money, they were much more reluctant to part with it, and therefore they had to make the quality of goods higher. Now, this has essentially happened to a lot of other things as well, and in particular, Fiat makes you settle. It makes you kind of much more lazy than you ought to be, and this is because when you have something like like some hobby or something like that, it's become a lot easier to sort of like substitute like watching somebody else do it instead of doing it yourself. Now this is just sort of like the Fiat pattern, which is that you get happy with just sort of like a cheap substitute than the real thing. If, for example, you listen to music, now there's nothing wrong with listening to music, but it's a very poor substitute to actually playing. The thing about learning to play an instrument or something like that is that it takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of time and effort that goes into learning how to play an instrument, and it's very frustrating for a long time before you get good enough where you can like just sort of like bust out like like playing on a piano or something like that. And it's there's a you have to have an especially low time preference in order to do that, which in a Fiat world that's much more common than it is in a sound money world. That's much more common than it is in a Fiat world. So in a Fiat world, what you end up with is a much more much cheaper imitations, right? Like you go and listen to 8 different bands play, and you might enjoy them or whatever, but it's not at the same level of satisfaction as being able to play it yourself. And anyone that's actually played music will tell you like it feels really great, like being able to play something with sort of like a degree of expertise. And this isn't the only thing, right? Like it's we watch sports or watch porn or watch whatever, and it's a substitute for the real thing. It's a cheap imitation, much in the same way that Fiat is essentially a cheap imitation of real money. That's all to say that like when you have sound money, you're going to have many more people that are incentivized to seek after long-term happiness, long-term goals, long-term skills and so on, instead of just sort of like drowning themselves in whatever makes them happy at the moment. Like long-term happiness almost always is dependent on things that you're going to have to invest a lot of time and effort into. raising children, or like becoming an expert in a particular field, or getting really good at something. Those are the things that tend to make people happy over the long term. But they're not. I mean, they're sort of like cheap imitations that are constantly tempting, and this is what sort of the fiat system makes clear. Anyway, hope that helps you. This song is done.